My name is Paul, and the best way to explain this is to go back a ways. Years ago, I was spending a good deal of time in the library stacks, reading obscure experimental music journals. Pretty strange stuff, really. Oh, thank you. I was also studying cognitive and perceptual psychology, and gradually, a series of ideas began to take shape. Sort of through a collision of ideas. But in a good way, of course. The first of these was the idea of sacred space. That the places where God and man made contact or where some miracle occurred are holy. Many mountains are considered holy by someone. Mount Sinai, where God spoke to Moses. Mount Olympus, the home of the Greek gods. Mount Kailas, also known as Mount Meru in West Tibet, where Hindus and Buddhists believe the axis of the world connects the earthly and the celestial realms. Mount Ararat, where the Ark found ground. And Mount Taishan, where 72 Chinese emperors offered imperial sacrifices. Some humans were so certain they themselves were links to the divine that they built their own sacred mountains. Not all sacred mountains are large. The devout make pilgrimages to sacred places like Mecca, the Ganges River, or Jerusalem. This 13th century map shows Jerusalem as the center of the spiritual universe. And if you're far from any inherently spiritual place, it can always be symbolically reconstructed through architecture, so long as it follows some specific rules. A few carefully chosen accessories can give even the most ordinary spaces a taste of the sacred. The second idea has to do with the limits of human perception. We think we see most of what's around us, but in fact, our senses are severely limited. We only see a very narrow band on the spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. There are things too small to be seen, like molecules or quarks, if they do exist, though our vision can be extended by the use of microscopes or telescopes. Human hearing is limited from about 20 to 20,000 cycles per second, but many animals can hear well outside of this range, like this Mongolian moth who can hear up to 240,000 cycles per second, which is helpful to avoid this fellow who emits tones at the same frequency. Not surprisingly, many animals can hear well below what human beings can hear. Far lower than animal hearing is the region of infrasound, below 1 cycle every 1,000 seconds, and you're in the domain of meteorology and need the tools of seismology for measurement. For example, earthquakes shake the air, creating huge waves of low frequencies. Waves below the surface of the sea during big storms generate enormous airwaves called microbarms. And volcanoes create infrasound. Mount Pinatubo's 1991 eruption was measurable 1,700 miles away. The atmosphere itself makes sound, like blowing through your teeth, though 10,000 times lower. The Chandra X-ray Observatory found sound emanating from a black hole in the center of the Perseus cluster, 250 million light-years from Earth. A B-flat, it's 57 octaves below middle C, and its ripples are spaced 30,000 light-years apart. It's more than 1,000,000 billion times lower than human hearing. Maybe there's sound in the spinning of a galaxy, or the moon orbiting the Earth. You get the picture. Even the aurora borealis makes infrasound. Too bad we can't hear it. A third idea is the way this sense of the scale of things and the limits of perception had been used for aesthetic purposes. As early as 200 BC, the Nazca Indians of Peru made earthen drawings too large to be seen in their entirety. Some lines in these drawings were as long as 40 miles. Ando, an Australian artist, carried on this tradition with this piece that covers over 5 million square yards. And this tradition continues with crop circles, too large to be perceived in their entirety from the ground, but with some expectation that the designs can and will be seen from the air. Musical composers have also played with the idea of scale and the threshold of hearing. For instance, one composer wrote a musical score to be performed by church bells all over a city. There's no single place where the entire composition could be heard. Another used mallets on the cables of the Golden Gate Bridge, playing it like a harp. It made a sound too low for human hearing. John Cage's piece, entitled As Slow as Possible, was expected to take 20 to 30 minutes to perform. A slower performance of the piece began September 5, 2001 on the specially made organ in Halberstadt, Germany, in an abandoned cathedral. It will take 639 years to complete, with an intermission in the year 2319. This page from the score is for the first 36 years. Some compositions are below the threshold of hearing in volume. One composition was inaudible because it was so soft. Its orchestration was the sound made by rubbing a finger across different types of fur. Let's try it. So the idea of scale gets applied creatively in the invention of musical instruments themselves. Consider this organ in a cave in the Shenandoahs in Virginia, which plays by pinging tuned stalactites. It covers 3.5 acres. In Japan, there's a competition for the construction of the largest drum. Even larger, composer John Rose played Australian fences as if they were a 7-mile-long violin. Here's a perfect reproduction of Jimi Hendrix's guitar, but only 14 inches tall. There's an entire mini-industry in mini musical instruments. Who buys them? This guitar was made by engineers at Cornell. It must be the smallest musical instrument ever made. It's about the size of a human blood cell, and each string is the width of about 100 atoms. If it could be plucked, it would be inaudible. Lastly, we come to the matter of urban hieroglyphics, as I like to call these bits of incidental artifice, these ephemera of some construction crew Caravaggio. Unlike graffiti, which so crudely proclaims, "I was here," these miniature folk art emblems quietly state, something is here. Indeed, they are clues to the presence of unseen connection, whether of water mains, fiber optics, or gas lines, all unseen, for remaining buried mere feet from where we stand. This is one of my favorites, but I can't imagine what it means. For future generations, these touching artifacts of contemporary life would be cryptic clues of how we lived in this century, were they not so fleeting. Therefore, with the sponsorship of a generous grant from the Bay State Community Arts Council, we've engaged in an ambitious plan to catalog all of these unique markings, not unlike the conservation efforts used to record the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs through carefully made rubbings. So how does this all come together? By symbolically creating sacred space across 3 towns in west suburban Boston. This was done by the use of 32 unique numbered patterns which, when transferred to the pavement in stencils in carefully chosen locations, created the image of a Buddha in seated meditation, or would have if each stencil pattern could be linked to the others in a connect-the-dots manner and then seen from the air. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's take it in steps. First, an image was selected. A seated Buddha was chosen because it's the symbol of the possibility of awakening, or the potential to live with wisdom and compassion. And I'm partial to Buddhas. Not a bad blessing for the neighborhood. Then, a distinctive pattern for the stencils either has to be chosen or created. In this case, the goal is to look utilitarian, as though the symbols might actually be mistaken for something useful, but not so utilitarian that they actually will be. Here's what was used. 6 horizontal bars, variously broken by a number. Each stencil was also given a consecutive number in the upper left-hand corner from 1 to 32. These patterns may resemble uniform product codes or perhaps a Chinese hexagram from the I Ching, but in fact are taken from tablature, an alternative system of musical notation for guitarists, in which each line represents a string, and each number on the string represents a fret position on the string to be played. The patterns, taken in turn, represent a number of bars of a musical composition for the guitar, written over 14 linear miles. Next came the job of plotting the points on a map, avoiding obstacles like highways, ponds, forests, golf courses, or other inconvenient sites. Custom maps had to be made identifying each location. Each pattern was made into a stencil by hand. Volunteers are recruited.
I was going to get it done. And then I figured, well, I'm turning 50. Why not use that as an excuse to do this? So the plan was...
Then we wait for good weather. After several delays, we choose Saturday, April 12th, 2003. It rains heavily that morning, but after earlier postponements, we take a chance on a clear evening. Our luck holds out. 21 people volunteer and are divided into 6 teams. Each team is given a kit consisting of lists of geographic locations, detailed maps, stencils, disposable cameras, and cans of spray chalk. This chalk is supposed to fade in a matter of weeks, hopefully distinguishing this project from simple vandalism if anyone is challenged. Finally, each team also carries a letter from the Bay State Community Arts Council, a fictitious sponsoring organization to provide cover just in case.
Hi, I'm Jennifer from the Bay State Community Arts Council, and I'd like to tell you about some exciting things we're doing here.
Under cover of darkness, the teams hit the streets, fanning out across the suburbs. In the silence before the sermon, I ask myself, why must I grow old? The wind passes the curtain, caresses my face, comes fully inside, and tells me everything I need to know. In this reverie I wonder, what is this wind, I wonder? What's the meaning of this wind, I wonder? Answer comes in the language of the wind. Closer and closer, and reveals all my secrets. What do I await in this well-lit silent home? Longing for what might be. How strange this should delight me. Remember to remember.
Check.
Nothing is missing.
Alright, next one.
Even longing is a blessing. This will all be forgotten. Intimate and strange.
Great.
streetlights suddenly went out, and the team was greeted by an unexpected guest.
You put out the light. You see, the Buddhist power put out the light. Incredible, as it seems.
I think we should turn it 90 degrees. Hey, dude, where are you guys from?
An art committee.
What are you doing?
We're putting art on it.
It's chalk, spray chalk.
No particular reason.
Part of an art project.
It's an art project. I'm a police officer. I'm not too stuck minding.
I've got some papers in the van I can show you.
Okay.
A little more?
Do me a favor.
Okay.
Yeah, finally. We can get into one.
The paper mentioned is none other, of course, than the credentials from the Bay State Community Arts Council, the most persuasive line of which, no doubt, was this. Please be assured that this project has met the Council's stringent standards for aesthetic and cultural merit as well as all environmental guidelines. The officer is persuaded and departs.
We barely escaped arrest.
The team recounts the incident.
We got out just with your letter from the Arts Council. But,
Do you have a license for
do you have a license for the car? And we said, nothing. And then he says, no, really, I'm not kidding, I'm a police officer. And we said, well, this is an art project. We have a letter from the Arts Council. Well,
I'm safe, I think.
I heard his footsteps.
Well, no, because we'll put it on Paul Fulton.
Evidence is reviewed and analyzed.
Neurologist at NC.
Look, you're already
Shadowy character.
Right.
The would-be crime scene is carefully reconstructed and examined. People have asked, why go to so much trouble for a project that no one will ever actually see in its entirety? And the answer is important, and I want to clarify we're here and there. So and I think that should probably put this question to rest for now and forever.